It's not showing up yet, so.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jim,
And I'm Kevin,
and we are.
the Signal Brothers. Hey, welcome back for another live podcast with us. We're really enjoying this, and we decided that we're going to take a break from politics. There's enough politics going on every day, and so today's topic is all about marriage. So, just a few things. Hey, listen, if you're interested in coming on the podcast, hey, let Jim and I know. We'd love to have you on as a guest. If there's something you're passionate about that you would like to talk about, we'd love to have you, right, as a guest. And we do take questions live in the chat. So please feel free to put questions in the chat. Just know, please keep the questions aligned with the subject. We're not going to step out on a different subject. We're going to focus on the subject at hand. So, without further ado, let's talk about marriage. So, I've been married now over 33 years. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure how my wife and I made it 33 and a half years, but we have. Jim, how about you?
This is my current marriage. That sounds kind of bad. We will have been married for 10 years at the end of the year. We are both remarried. We don't have any kids together. We do have kids separately from previous relationships. So mine will be more of a what not to do.
Well, I think you've had some success as well, right?
Yeah, hopefully this one, yeah. I'm hopefully I can learn what the others, mistakes I can apply to this one.
Awesome. Well, when my wife and I were married 25 years, we looked at each other and said, "How the heck did we get here? How did we make it?" And we came up with 5 rules, and the 5 rules are going to be the crux of our conversation this evening. So, as we get started, if we're going to roll through these. I'm going to give off rule number 1. We'll talk about it, and when we're done talking about it, we'll roll on to rule number 2. So, rule number 1: marriage is work, and both people got to work at the marriage in order for it to be successful. What say you about that, Jim?
That is very true. To expand on that, you've heard the saying that it takes 2 people to make a marriage work, and it takes 2 people to make a marriage fail. I agree with half of that. It takes 2 people to make a marriage work, and it is work. But by the same token, if you have a marriage and only one of you's working and the other's given up, it only takes one to fail a marriage. Once they've got to that point, there's nothing you can do. The trick is to not get to that point, which can be, achieved by some of your other rules you listed and some of the other things that we're talking about. But it is work. It's not always sunshine and roses. There is sacrifice. There is compromise. And yeah, it's definitely work. You have to want it and you have to work at it.
Yeah, at my age, we're going to a lot of weddings, and I see the bride and groom so happy, and they're like, "Oh, isn't this wonderful? Marriage is so wonderful." Yeah, it's wonderful, but it's work. It's work. It's compromise, as you said, and everything in the marriage is work. Who's washing the clothes? Who's washing the cars? Who's mowing the lawn? Who's doing the grocery shopping? Right? Some of that stuff you guys can do together, but really, there's work involved to keep it successful.
Right.
So for those of you who are thinking about getting married or newly married, understand there's a lot of work ahead. You're going to have to work at your marriage. Both of you are going to have to work at your marriage.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, you complement each other, which is what a partnership is about. I mean, if there's things that you can't do, she can do them. If there's things she can't do, you can do them. But if there's something you're both good at, well, you don't want to butt heads. You want to take turns. I mean, you're supposed to complement each other and, not always challenge each other, not always butt heads, find a way around that. That's where your compromise comes in.
Yeah.
And there are things you can do together, but if you can do the things that are necessary for not just a marriage, but running a household, and if you can divide up those chores, whatever they may be, you gave a list of some, there's many, many more, then you maximize your time together. And sometimes, God, this is a horrible task. I don't want to do this. But sometimes you got to. And then while she's doing that one, when you're both done, look, our time's free. There's rewards. There's rewards for those sacrifices.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, there's things that Uta and I do routinely together. Every week we go shopping at, the grocery store together. We do that together. And there's times where I got something going on and she goes and does it on her own. And there's times where she's got something going on. And guess what? I go do the grocery shopping. So that's that work, working at it. That's a great example of working at it.
Yeah, she does most of the grocery shopping. I go and get the bigger stuff, like when we're having an event or there's a big sale, or I'll go. I'm the one to go and get $300, $400, $500 worth of meat to pack the freezer. She'll go get normally our daily essentials, that kind of thing, because a lot of that falls into the realm that, I work from home and she works outside the home. So it's easier for her where she's already out. Plus she has a cash business, it just makes it easier that way. So, and,
Sure.
and there's things like that. If I don't do most of the grocery shopping, where I'm the one that does all the yard work. I mean, there's trade-offs,
Absolutely. Yeah, there's trade-offs, definitely. When it comes to the clothes, my wife does all the washing, all the clothes, which I'm very, very thankful for. Because if she didn't do it, I'd be taking all them clothes down to the cleaners to be washed and folded and ironed and all that stuff. I just wouldn't be doing the wash. I don't know. It's not that I'm not capable of, because when she does, I mean, she goes on road trips and I take care of washing my clothes when she's gone, but I really prefer not to do the laundry.
Yeah. Well, we lived together for 4 months and you never did stink and you never did look dirty. So yeah, you know how to do laundry.
Yeah, I can do laundry when I have to, but I'm at a point in my life where I don't do it. I don't have to. So
yeah, the laundry thing is kind of where we but it heads a little bit, but she pretty much does the laundry because her work schedule is client based. She may have all of Tuesday free, but next week she's busy all Tuesday. So you never know. So whenever she has a few hours at home, she'll throw in a load or two. Me, I'm the kind of person that every Friday at 7 p.m., that's when I do laundry. And that way I know I don't have to worry about it any other time of the week. Plus, I have a major disability. I can't remember what I wore yesterday. So if I do the laundry on a weekly basis, I know those shirts hanging up I didn't wear yesterday. With her doing the laundry, I don't know if I wore that shirt yesterday or not. So I can very well end up wearing the same shirt 2 days in a row, So we've gone back and forth on that. But I mean, it's, nothing serious, but we've gone bickering a little bit on that. I was like, I can, because I can do my own laundry as well. When I was 16 years old, my mama cut me off. She said, "You're doing all your stuff now." So I can cook, I can clean, I can do, I can repair my own clothes, I can wash, I can, iron, I can do all that. So I'm totally self-sufficient. But she beat me to laundry every time we tried to do it. She beat me to it. So I just kind of stepped back, and she's completely happy with doing it. She's like, "Well, I don't have to build a wall out in the yard, so I'm happy doing laundry." Okay, I'm building the wall out there. Again, back to trade-off.
So I got a question for you. You said you do your laundry 7 o'clock on Fridays. Is that including if Ohio State's playing in a game?
I mean, how long does it really take to wash a load of laundry? I mean, the ex-wife and I used to always get, it's such a big, well, if you don't do it for 14 days, yeah, it's a huge task.
Sure.
You just let it pile up. But if you do a load or two a day, how long does it really take?
Right.
It's annoying. Absolutely. It's a chore. It's not fun. Everybody rather be spend their time doing something else, but it's a chore. you do it. You got to do it. And then,
Yeah.
at night, sometimes when she's like, well, I got some laundry laying on the bed there. It's like, well, we'll go in there and, hang up laundry,
So let's roll on to rule number 2. In your marriage, there's going to be sunny days. There's also going to be rainy days. And there's even going to be an occasional hurricane or tornado. So be prepared to repair and rebuild your marriage. What's your thoughts on that, Jim?
You've always got to be you've always got to be looking for ways to, for lack of a better term, remain relevant. I mean, everybody likes excitement, but everybody likes, normalcy as well. And you've got to do things. You've always got to be working on something. You've always got to be doing something to keep things excited. You got to be looking for things, entertainment that you guys like together. Like we do a lot of home improvements and stuff, and we'll get together, on and off for a couple of weeks and just literally build out the room, before we go buy stuff and before I get to work on it. We do always working on something to improve something, that makes something better. Always looking on something that.
Yeah, but let's talk about when the bad stuff happens, right?
When
So
the
that's the
bad
whole
stuff
crux
happens.
of the rules, right? The crux of the rule is everybody thinks about the happy days.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks about the rainy days, right? And the rainy days are the days where you're not getting along, or when the hurricane or tornado comes on through and rips up that household, right? And you got to repair and rebuild that marriage.
Yeah. You got to, sometimes the best thing to do is step away. And you've got to know to let that person step away. Because, I mean, there's a number of times we've stepped away from each other, not just in this marriage, but, my previous relationships. You step away, you come back in a couple hours, half the time I can't remember what the heck we were arguing about. Now, if it's something a bit more serious, you come back, you got a clear head, because at first when that tornado hits, you're in panic mode. You're in panic mode. Your mind's going 100 miles an hour. You're throwing all these possibilities out and everything. You've got to step back. You come back, you calm down, you come back with a clearer head, and the stuff comes. What can we do to take care of this? What do we sacrifice? What do we give up? What do we, and hack it out together, just like you would anything else. And it's about the communication. I mean, depending on what that tornado actually was.
That hurricane or tornado is usually around money or infidelity. Those are two of the key things that creates a hurricane or tornado rolling through. I would have
to roll in another one.
What's that? And
this would be something that you having a successful long-term marriage wouldn't experience: the spouse's other children.
Yeah. Yep. That's right.
That is a huge. I'd have to put it ahead of infidelity, to be honest. Okay. Because you've got children, especially when they're older children, and it's a parent's, and I would dare to say a mother's intuition, because a mother, you look at any creature on this planet and their children are in need, that is the most ferocious thing you ever want to approach, is a mother. That's their role. So, you're trying, if something's going on with your spouse's child, or worse yet, the two children are at it for whatever reason, that can really, really tear down a marriage. That can really.
Gotcha. And that's part where you're kind of rolling into rule number 5, but that's okay.
Yeah. But that's enough said on that. You get the idea. It can be.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in 33 and a half years of marriage, there's been some bad times in my marriage.
I'm sure.
There's been bad times, right? There's been crazy stuff that's happened in our marriage. And, those two things I talked about have been the issues, right? And money has probably been the biggest one, right? Money has been the biggest one. And it's amazing how easy money can really, really tear a marriage apart. Because I think, you're both individuals. You both got a perspective on how money's spent, how money's saved, right? And, who's responsible for paying what? And, hey, does it all go into a single check, single account, or do you have separate accounts? And, there's lots of people do it differently, right? But I will say that in the the few hurricanes or tornadoes we've had come through our house, we chose to repair and rebuild, right? We didn't walk away and choose to build somewhere else. We said, hey, we're staying here, right? The house is torn down to the foundation. It's time to rebuild it. And I think, and I'm not saying that's for everybody, right? Everybody's situation is different, Jim, right? So I'm not preaching that everybody should do that because every situation is different. I'm just saying how my wife.
I agree with you.
That's how me and my wife have approached it, right? We've approached it up. Hey, are we going to walk away? No, we're going to work on it, right? We're going to stick together. So,
well, what would the alternative be if you walked away from it and you're still building from scratch?
100%. So we said to death do us part. So we chose to work through, right? And that I think it's super important. Like I said, there's certainly reasons to leave a marriage. I'm not telling people that they need to stay in a bad marriage at all. I'm just talking about what me and my wife have personally done to persevere,
Right.
Super important. So rule number 3, which is a super important one. Court your spouse after you get married, just like you did before you get married. And I think you were talking a little bit about that before, Jim.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk about some things I do, and I'm probably going to piss my wife off, but that's okay because it's going to be all over the internet. But it's nothing bad, right? But it's how we keep the fire in the marriage, right? What do you do? What are some of the techniques you got to keep the marriage alive, Jim?
Well, it's little things. My wife, one of her big things is she likes the physical touch. I'll pass by her, pat her on the butt. I'll pass by her, just stroke her hair. If she's sitting on the couch and I'm sitting in the chair, I'll just reach over. I don't even have to say a word. I'll just reach over. She'll see it reach over, and we'll just hold hands for like 30 seconds. And things like that. You go to the store and you see something you think she'd like, you get it for her. If you're shopping online, you see something she'd like, you get it for her. I mean, you take her out on trips, take her vacations. I surprised my wife with our 10-year anniversary trip for December that we're taking. We talked about a few places, and she settled on one that she thought she might like, and I went ahead and did it and presented her with the fact that it's bought and paid for. I mean, and when you take her out, like you said, you treat her just like you did before. I still go around and open the car door for her. I open the door to the restaurant for her.
I do that as well.
She sits first. She sits first. I may not always pull out the chair. We're a little older. We don't move quite as well as we used to, so I don't pull the chair out because we don't want an incident. You know what I mean? But I'll help her to her chair before I sit down. It's. I learned a long time ago that it's the little things. You think little things go unnoticed. They don't.
Yeah.
They don't. Not at all.
Yeah. So the little things I do in my marriage still is, one thing is my wife, she's a big coffee drinker. So I always get up in the morning and I always make her coffee. Her first cup of coffee in the morning, and I also make the cup of coffee that she takes to work with her, right? So those are little things that I do. It shows that I care, right? It shows initiative, that I care, right? Those little things are what mean a lot to my wife. Some of the other crazy things I do, well, she gets up and takes a shower before I do in the morning, right? So once I hear the shower go off, I'll jump out of bed, I'll run into the bathroom, and I'll go, damn, you're still beautiful, right? That is still rekindling the marriage, right? Still making it live, right? Those are some of the things we got to do to court your spouse, right? Think about the things you did before you got married, right? Because usually I think it's after about 2 years, right? You kind of get into a routine, right? And you start taking each other for granted. Some people it happens in 6 months. Some people it happens a little bit later, but usually around 2 years when you get kind of settled into your marriage and you're like, yep, that's my husband or that's my wife. And this is what we do every day, right? So.
Yeah, that's my wife. Still. Yeah, I'm just as guilty of that as anybody else in previous relationships. You get you get in a routine, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but if you allow that routine to become your entire existence, that's not good.
No. And there's times I bring my wife home flowers just for the heck of it. And she goes, "What's this for?" I said, "Just so."
I brought my wife home a stuffed animal one day. This is just the most recent time. It was something that she said she saw that her friend got, and there's a certain brand of stuffed animals, and that's a little more sought after. And this was months ago, and I happened to be looking for something else for my granddaughter, and they happened to put those back out in the same display. And I remember that she said she wanted this when I'd never seen it. Grabbed it for her, come home with it, and she's just sitting down waiting for me to come home because I'd gone out with a friend to get something to eat. And I come home and I just set the bag down on the couch. I said, "I got you a prize." And she was so touched that I remembered this from months earlier that she was looking for this.
Because us guys usually don't remember anything that we did yesterday, never mind 6 months ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. It's really important, right? This courting your spouse is so important, right? Yeah. Because if you don't, right, somebody else will.
Now, like the other night, I ended up sleeping upstairs because I snore real bad. I don't sleep real good. So sometimes I sleep upstairs if I know she's got to get up early. And she ended up getting up before I did, got dressed and left. And I'm still asleep upstairs. And my alarm clock goes off about 7:30. And so I go and log into work, make sure everything's okay. And then I go downstairs to get something to eat. There's a note, just a little note, just a handwritten note that she just left on the counter for me. You know, I won't read what it said, but you get the idea. Yeah. You know, and it's just, little things like that. It's just, I'm still here. I still love you. We're still together. We're still a team. And she worked very long that day. So by the time I left to do, I think I went fishing that night, and she got home. I didn't see her until I got home at 11:30. There was a traffic jam. Oh my God. I'm in the boat. I'm with the boat on the freeway. Oh my God. Anyway, I got home at 11:30. So I didn't see her for literally 24 hours, even though we lived together.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God. But that note was huge, and yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's super important because if you don't court your spouse, somebody else will. Right? Let's be honest, right? So if you take each other for granted and you're not courting, right, somebody else is going to try, right? It's just a fact of life, right? It's human nature, right?
Yeah, and it kind of plays into one of my rules that I try to live by as far as my relationships. And I got this. I've always thought this, but I never really thought about the wording it, saying it out loud until I saw. You remember the 1993 movie with Brandon Lee, The Crow?
Yep.
He says in that movie, nothing is trivial. You remember that line? Nothing is trivial. Shelley used to like the little things. I used to think they were trivial. Nothing is trivial. Believe me. And I thought about that. I was like, my God, that's exactly what I think, but I've never put it into terms like that. Nothing's trivial. If it is important to your spouse, it should be important to you. You may not like it. You may not agree with it. It may not be something you're into, but if it's something that's important to them,
you got to be important to you.
Yeah, and indulge and respect it.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
And vice versa. Nothing is trivial, no matter how stupid you may think it is. It's important to them, so it should be important to you. And there's nothing worse, and I've been in a relationship like this, there's nothing worse than somebody taking something that you're passionate about and belittling you, using it to belittle you with.
Yeah.
And telling you how stupid and dumb it is and how it makes that's the worst thing you can do to a person. That is just
true. It breaks down the trust in the relationship.
And it builds resentment. And once resentment sets in, there's no fixing it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting because if you think about it, right? Some of the things that you do to show your spouse you appreciate them, they're really not hard things to do. They're simple. Mm-hmm. They're simple, trivial. They don't have to be buying a new car, buying a new diamond ring, or they don't have to be huge, right? It's a bunch of little things, I think, that are so important to courting your spouse, right? And keeping them engaged in the marriage, right?
Yeah. My wife has informed me if I ever go out and spend $10,000 on anything for her, she'll kill me. We could do so much else with that $10,000. If we're spending that kind of money, we're doing it together. Like, okay.
That's it.
Yeah.
It. We do that in my house, except when it comes to cars and boats. But it's that's probably a subject for another podcast. So.
Yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you.
All right. So rolling on to rule number 4. Everyone's got baggage. You think you see somebody else will bring you happiness? Just remember, everyone has got baggage.
Yeah.
Jim, what do you think about that?
That's true. And as we discussed earlier, it's especially true when you've been in previous marriages and have children. I mean, and older, just life in general. When you start a relationship at 20 versus starting one at 50, just even without children, you're going to have a lot more baggage than you had at 20. And then you add children to the mix, you're going to have baggage. You're going to have baggage that includes the children. You have exes you have to deal with, which means your spouse has to deal. I mean, it just multiplies. But everybody has baggage, and like you said,
everybody's got it.
You think you're going to move on to somebody else? You think they don't have baggage?
100%.
Come on, everybody's got it. Everybody's got drama. And my wife always said that she will never be involved with somebody that's got more baggage than she does. Yeah.
I think other people talk about it's better to deal with the devil you know than the devil you don't.
Yes. Right? Yes.
So, I think it's super important because I think all of us, it's human nature, right? You meet somebody and it's only, friendship and, you say, man, I wonder. No, stop wondering. Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how nice it looks in the beginning. When you met your spouse, it was really nice in the beginning. And then you guys got married and then, the baggage came out, right? We exposed the baggage. So do you think it's going to be any different that nice person that's talking nice to you and telling you things you want to hear? Do you think there's not going to be some baggage behind that? I think so.
Yeah. The grass is not always greener on the other side of the fence.
It is not. It may be greener, but it doesn't make it better.
Mm-mm. But usually it's greener because there's a lot of crap to go along with it.
Yeah. I think it's super important because it's very easy when you look at the previous rules we talked about, right? Talked about the tornadoes and hurricanes, rainy days. We talked about, courting. If you're not courting, right? It's easy to get swept up by looking in a different direction. Just remember, everybody's got baggage, man. Everybody's got it. Mm-hmm. So, super important. If you're I'm not saying you shouldn't trade baggage. People do it all the time. They trade one set of baggage for another. It's kind of like being on Let's Make a Deal.
Yeah.
Right? Do you want the box in front of you or do you want what's behind door number 1?
Yeah.
And you don't know if it's a zonk.
Mm-hmm. You have no idea.
Yes, sir.
How the frying pan into the fire.
That's it. You could be jumping from jumping from a hot situation to the frying pan, 100%.
Yeah.
And don't even know it. All right, Jim. We'll get into rule number 5, right? Has to do with having kids when you have kids. And I think this applies if you have kids together or from previous marriage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kids will be kids. They're human beings. They want what they want, right? And they will try to play you and your spouse against each other. Not because they're trying to break down the marriage, just because they want what they want, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what happens, right? They come and ask you, hey, can I go do this? And you say, sure. And maybe your spouse is not on board with it, right? And they go either countermand it or they find out you approved it and they get pissed off, right? So that's just one situation. But when it happens over and over again, it becomes taxing on a marriage. It becomes completely taxing. So one of the rules that me and my wife put in place with our kids, and we're not a blended family, so they're our children, both our children, is whenever they started coming and ask us stuff, the first question I would ask is, what did mom say? And if they went to my wife said, what did dad say? Right? Mm-hmm. So they knew that we were a united front. That is so important to be a united front in front of the kids. And I'll tell you, if you make a decision on your own, because there's time, you can't always, there are going to be situations where, right, you're not both going to be available to make that situation, right?
Mhm.
And so you'll make a decision. If the other one disagrees with it, you want to change direction, you got to get together behind closed doors, not in front of the kids,
Right.
talk it out, yell it out, scream it out, whatever it is, right? And come to an agreement what the direction is. Either you're rolling with it or you're changing. But the key is when you come out that door and you tell the kids what the decision is, right? It's got to be united front.
Hmm.
Because if not, I'm telling you, the kids, they're not trying to break you up, but they want to get what they want, right? So, what's your thoughts on that, Jim?
Well, it depends too on what actually it is, how important is what they're asking that both parents can't be available. I mean, is it something that, hey, the concert's tonight, I got to know. Well, mom's working and, I can't ask her. Or is it something like, we got this thing going on next week? I mean, if it's, something that can be put off, it should be put off until both parents can talk. Now, my almost entire experience raising children has been separated. So, putting together a united front in that situation is just as important, but not as easy to do. Especially there's been times, years at a time, when my daughter's mother and I were literally not speaking because we couldn't. And during that time, those girls played that. They did. They absolutely did. I'll never forget when she and I were able to talk again, and the girls tried it, and we were like, "No, your mom said this." Well, you talked to mom, and they were startled, right? But we usually tried to keep at least the base rules the same from household to household. There were times we obviously had to make a call. We had to make a call, but having raised these kids together for so many years, we pretty much knew what the other one agreed with and didn't agree with. But of course, there were times, and usually those times, if it was that important, we would put it off. But usually it was something, smaller that we could make a decision on. The other parent wouldn't be too upset about it, And there's times we would pick up the phone and say, "Hey, I've got the girls, they want to do this. Is this something you're okay with or not?" And sometimes she would be and sometimes she wouldn't. And then we'd all talk and we'd speakerphone it or whatever else. And but always a united front. If you're not allowed to eat candy after 10 p.m., I'm just grabbing something at your mom's house, you're not allowed to eat it after 10 p.m. at my house.
100%.
Got to be a united front. If you're not allowed to go, stay over Bob's house till dinner when you're with your mom, you're not allowed to go when you're with me.
Yep.
Now Bob can come over. Well, I don't want to do that. You know how that goes. But yeah, the united front is just as important in one scenario as it is in the other. And a lot of people will say, "Well, we can't," and that's true. Some parents will just. That's a whole other story. But as a parent, even in that situation where you're not together anymore, you need to make yourself available for the good of the child. Because, they're going to play against each other, like you said, but they start doing that, they can end up with, "Well, we didn't know where our oldest daughter was that night because mom said it was okay. And she told dad mom was okay. And she told mom that dad was okay. And so she went and did her own thing. And we had no idea where she was."
Sure.
That's what you end up with.
Yep.
That was a scary night. That was a scary night.
100%. One of the times that I made a decision independently, when I think back, that created a hurricane in our house. We were living in Germany, and my oldest son at the time was 11, rounding 12. And I decided I was going to let him fly from Germany to California on his own. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I'm not as checked baggage, right? They got the program where, you pay a little extra, they sign for them, right? And they make sure the person at the other end, right, that's supposed to get them, right? So I sent them out to my parents to go hang out for a couple weeks in the summer, and my parents were going to Mexico, and my wife wasn't excited about that either, right? So a lot of paperwork had to be done, right? Power of attorney, all that stuff, right? But I went and made that decision independently. And I will tell you that it was probably not the smartest decision I made independently. I didn't talk to my wife about it first. And, it was pretty contentious. But guess what? My son flew to California on his own, got there on the other end, went down to Mexico with my parents and my sister and my sister's in-laws who are from Guadalajara. They went to Guadalajara. He had a great time, right?
Awesome.
Great experience, right? To do that at 12 years old, right? And he had a little independence. He didn't have a lot because he wasn't just flying on his own and figuring it out, right? He was getting handed off to flight attendants or whatnot. But I thought it was a good experience for him.
Yeah.
But again, I made that decision independently. Didn't consult the wife. Probably a major decision that she should have been consulted before I moved forward on it. But nonetheless, here we are. We're still together 33 and a half years later, right?
Awesome.
We worked through it.
I don't think we ever had. We luckily, even because she and her and my issues were her and my issues. They weren't so much with the kids. Like I said, we had known each other and pretty much knew what each other would agree with and what we didn't agree with. So even when we had a disagreement, it was never on anything so major that it was a big deal. Our biggest contention was, even when we were still together, is how you discipline a child. And I grew up with spare the rod, spoil the child. She didn't. So that's what our main contention was when it came with the children. And I ended up adjusting more than she did. My philosophy on that changed. And it became, my children pretty much knew, which worked out great, is they knew I would spank them, so I never had to. So that works. And there's degrees of that. If you can get them to change their behavior without physical discipline, that's fine. That works for me.
That's what you want.
9 times out of 10, that works. The only time I ever resorted to physical discipline after we had discussed this for years was if they did something that was serious enough where they could get seriously injured, which happened a couple of times.
Sure.
Luckily they weren't.
Yeah.
But I needed to drive that home. You know what I mean? Because you put a kid in timeout, for what is it? A minute per year of age, which they're not going to remember that. Once they're up out of that chair, they're not going to remember that, but they'll remember their butt getting spanked. Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't run out in front of that car again.
Yeah.
So that was our big contention. And she was pretty much comfortable with the fact that I would not physically discipline them unless I absolutely had to when they were with me. There was one incident which would have blown over, but one of her friends, which is no longer her friend because of this, one of her friends turned us into the Department of Child Services over it. It was one on her butt, and we were both talking to DCS. And as I told her, I said, I almost said my ex-wife's name. I said to her, that's not your friend. That did not need to happen. That's not your friend. And but usually we never had to resort to that. And I find loss of privileges, loss of computer games, TV, whatever, work 99 times out of 100.
100%.
So
100%.
That was our big thing.
It loses its effectiveness over time, right?
Yeah.
So I concur.
10, 12.
I concur 100%, right?
Yeah.
I agree with that. Right. But it's tough, man. And it was good is obviously you and your wife were focused on parenting the kids, even though you guys weren't together, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
But I know I got some friends that are divorced, and the kids become leverage, right, in the divorce.
Oh, that absolutely happens.
In other words, they play the kids against each other, right? And that is not healthy for the kids, not healthy for the spouses that are separated or divorced, it's not a healthy situation, right?
No.
It becomes very manipulative. So it's good that you and your ex-wife were able to parent separately and still focus on
Yeah.
the kids, right? That's super important.
She never, even in some of our darkest days between she and I, we never really had a question on the kids, you
Yeah.
know. And we had this one thing that we started doing. And because when we weren't getting along, when we were at our worst, if we had to call each other, if there was a serious situation, no matter, because I mean, literally, we were both, a cocked shotgun. If we heard from the other, if there was going to be an argument, but if one called the other and said the word emergency, all that went away, and we dealt with the situation. She's done it a couple of times. I've done it a couple of times. We say that word emergency, and that the conversation that we were going to have, the fight we were going to have, or whatever, is gone. We got the focus back. We got the focus where it needed to be.
Absolutely. And Jim, the one thing that I forgot to bring up is that, being a military spouse, on top of being a spouse, is just tough. Being a military spouse is hard.
Yeah.
It's hard, man.
Because you're not just in the Army. They are too.
When I think about, I spent 21 months away. That's where we met, right? I went to school, we went to BNOC together. I went right to Korea. I was gone 21 months. My wife was 8.5 months pregnant when I left for school, right? Yeah. Hey, I did a year in Iraq, did several months in Afghanistan, right? And when you're away, right? I mean, they're raising, understand something. Their life still goes on day to day. When you come on back, you got to figure out how you fit in, right? That was probably the hardest thing for me when I came home from Korea in 1998, right? My son was 21, 22 months old. My wife had been she raised him. First 22 months of his life. And I came home and I had to figure out how to fit into the program, right? I couldn't just demand it was going to be a certain way. I had to figure it out, man. I had to figure out how to be a dad.
Yeah. I had that same issue. Yeah, I had that same issue when I got back from Korea in 93. My oldest daughter, my second child, 18 months. She's 18 months old. And I had no, she's 16 months old. And I'd been home on leave when she was a few months old. So of course she don't remember. So now I'm looking at this child, she's looking at me. And the only thing my wife at the time could tell me was she likes suckers. Here's a bag of suckers. Give her suckers, and that child had no idea who I was.
Sure.
And all of a sudden I'm sleeping in the same house as she is.
Yeah.
So it took a while. It
takes a while, right? And being a military spouse is tough, right? So hats off to all military spouses, because it is tough, man. It is tough. You never know how long your spouse is going to be gone, and it's just tough, just a tough situation. I think about that all the time, that on top of the normal challenges in a marriage, when you're married to a military person, right, it can be tougher. And if you're both in the military, I mean, think about the impact on kids if you're both right. So even tough on the kids too, right? Real tough on the kids. So
they just that's one of the reasons why I didn't re-enlist is I wanted to give my kid a stable home and not bounce him around every couple of years.
Yeah.
And that's how we ended up here.
So Jimmy, I did 20 years. I did 13 years active duty, 7 years in the reserves. And I remember being in Afghanistan with a one-star general. I won't mention his name on the podcast. God rest his soul. He's no longer living. But he says to me, "Hey, I heard you're going to retire when you hit 20." And I said, "Yes, sir." I said, my oldest son, he's going to be 12. At the time he was going to be 12. And, my other kids were 8 and 4. And I said, "Hey, I've done my time, and it's time now to focus on the family." And his answer was, "Don't worry, they get over it." You have no idea what went through my mind when he said, "Don't worry, they get over it." I wanted to tell him a few things, but obviously that wouldn't have boded very well, telling him what I thought. So, but I will tell you what it did do. It did absolutely cement my resolve to retire as soon as I hit 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There was no doubt that I wasn't staying any longer because I didn't want to ever have regrets about not being there when I could have been. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it really wasn't about me anymore. It was really about them and being there for them. So interesting situation that I thought I'd share. Right? It was a decision. Yeah, I could have, I could have made sergeant major, command sergeant major. Sure, I could have. Right? But it wasn't about me anymore. It was about them.
Yeah, I mean, when I decided not to reenlist, there was a couple issues, a couple of reasons why, and that was one of them. But just the way things were going at the time, it was just like this is not the army I joined. It changed too much, just in those 6 years. And I think about it, and I think, well, what would have happened if I reenlisted? Would I? But then my thought would have been, well, that marriage would have probably ended anyway if it was already doomed. And then my kids would now be living in a different state than me. I was like, well, no, okay, then I'll take this. Most of my kids are living in the same state, so I'll take it.
And people often ask me, well, do you have regrets about retiring? And I say no, and they said why? And I said, well, it's pretty simple. I said I was there for my kids. Number one, number two, the only thing I really gave up was a parking spot in front of the PX and commissary. Right? That's all I really gave up, right? Yeah. Yeah, it was a good decision. If I were to go back in time, if you go back in time, I would have made the same decision again, 100%.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, Jim, I think we've ran through all the topics of marriage. We should probably give our viewers an insight what we're doing, right? We're starting to plan out, right? In 2 weeks, right? We're going to be talking about the First Amendment, right?
Yep.
Super important topic, right? About your right to speak. And should it be infringed upon, even if it's not, right? I don't know. We'll talk about that in 2 weeks, won't we?
Yep, that's the whole freedom of the press, and can you trust the press anymore, and conflicting information and manipulation and everything else that goes along with it.
So it should be interesting. I am looking forward to it. I think we'll have a pretty spirited debate on that because I think while I agree with a lot of things, I think there's some things going on today that I think we got to put some, I won't say restrictions in place, but controls. But we'll have a great conversation about it. I'm looking forward to doing it with you in 2 weeks, Jim. I enjoyed this, by the way. I think this was our 6th podcast.
I think so, 5th or 6th.
6, yeah. I think we're at number 6, man.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it. Right. So, yeah. Well, folks, we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks. We plan to do these every 2 weeks, and we'll be talking about the First Amendment. So, I'm Kevin.
I'm Jim.
And we are
the Signal Brothers.
Have a great one, folks. Take care.